Sometimes, the greatest dangers to nature are not wild beasts or natural disasters, but us. In an attempt to solve one problem, humans have often created many more, often with irreversible consequences. This is the story of biocontrol gone wrong. In 1935, Australia faced a growing problem. Beetles were devastating sugarcane fields and threatening a vital industry. The proposed solution? Importing 102 cane toads from Hawaii. The plan was straightforward. The toads would feast on the beetles and restore balance. But what followed was anything but simple. The cane toads largely ignored the beetles and instead began an unstoppable march across the continent. Their numbers exploded. Worse still, they carried deadly toxins. Native predators that attempted to eat them, snakes, crocodiles, even curious pets, quickly perished. Today, it's estimated there are over 200 million cane toads across Australia. They've invaded ecosystems, pushed native species toward extinction, and remain one of the most infamous examples of ecological mismanagement in modern history. A quick solution that unleashed a long-term crisis. When European settlers arrived in New Zealand, they brought cats with them, not just as companions, but as a way to control rats and mice that had hitched a ride on ships. It seemed reasonable at the time, but New Zealand's ecosystem was unlike any other. Before humans, there were almost no land mammals in New Zealand. Native birds like the kiwi, kakapo, and mohua had evolved without natural predators. Many were flightless, nesting on the ground. To the cats, they were easy prey. The result? A slow, devastating decline in bird populations. Entire species vanished. And to this day, feral cats remain one of the leading threats to New Zealand's native wildlife. In trying to control one invasive species, settlers introduced another, far more dangerous. In the 19th century, Caribbean sugar plantations were under siege from rats. The solution? Introduce the Indian mongoose, a fierce and agile predator. At first glance, it seemed to work, but no one considered the difference in behavior between rats and mongooses. Rats are nocturnal. Mongooses are active by day. The two rarely cross paths. Instead, the mongooses turned their attention to other easy prey: ground-nesting birds, reptiles, and amphibians. The ecological damage was swift and severe. Entire native species vanished from islands like Jamaica and Puerto Rico. In trying to protect crops, humans triggered a cascade of extinctions. Let's go back to Australia. In 1859, a single man brought 24 rabbits to Australia. His goal? To have a few animals to hunt for sport. But those few rabbits found a land without predators and plenty of food. The population exploded. Within decades, hundreds of millions of rabbits were devouring crops, stripping vegetation, and turning fertile land into dust. Native species couldn't compete. Erosion and habitat destruction followed. Attempts at control were desperate and often bizarre, fences stretching thousands of kilometers, viruses like myxomatosis and calicivirus. But rabbits adapted. They survived, and they multiplied. To this day, they remain a symbol of unintended ecological disaster. Let's go from Australia to the USA. During the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl era, the US government was desperate to stop the erosion of southern farmlands. One proposed solution? A fast-growing vine from Asia called kudzu. It was hailed as a miracle plant, a natural shield against erosion and poor soil. Farmers were paid to plant it. Roadsides, railways, and empty fields were blanketed with kudzu. And it worked. At first. But then it kept growing and growing. Kudzu didn't just stop erosion. It smothered trees, collapsed buildings, and devoured entire landscapes. Today, kudzu covers millions of acres across the southeastern United States. It climbs 30 centimeters a day, earning its nickname, the vine that ate the South. What began as a well-meaning act of conservation became an ecological nightmare. In the 1970s, catfish farms in the southern United States were facing a growing problem: algae and parasite overgrowth. The solution seemed simple: introduce a fish from Asia known for its appetite, the Asian carp. These fish were brought in to clean ponds naturally, reducing the need for chemicals. But what began as a clever shortcut soon turned into an ecological nightmare. When floods hit, the carp escaped. They entered the Mississippi River system and never stopped. With no natural predators, they multiplied at an astonishing rate. Huge swarms of them now dominate major American waterways, outcompeting native fish, disrupting ecosystems, and even injuring boaters by leaping from the water. Efforts to stop their spread, electric barriers, targeted fishing, and even plans for underwater sound walls have all struggled to keep pace. Some fear that if they reach the Great Lakes, the consequences will be catastrophic. Once again, a solution turned into a threat. A fish brought in to fix a problem became a problem of its own. We entered nature like visitors, but behaved like conquerors. Each time we tried to fix the wild, we left behind more scars than healing. Not out of cruelty, but out of haste, ignorance, and the dangerous belief that we always know better. These aren't just stories of animals and plants. They are stories of hubris, of unintended grief, of forests silenced, rivers choked, skies emptied of wings. If there's one lesson hidden in these mistakes, it's this: nature is not ours to command. It is a delicate web, ancient, wise, and breathtakingly complex. It asks not for our control, but for our respect. So before we release another predator, another plant, another plan into the wild, maybe we should stop, listen, and remember, some of the worst disasters began with the best of intentions. You've just watched a record of decisions, calculated, sometimes careless, that reshaped ecosystems across the planet. These weren't myths or distant legends. They were deliberate human actions with measurable outcomes. If you found value in understanding how small decisions echo through time, support this channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing this video. More stories await. This is just one chapter in the ongoing chronicle of human influence on nature. See you in the next report.